Hi, I'm John Tolley. I work and run Banquet Records, and I'm joined by Frank Turner, who is Frank Turner of Frank Turner fame.
All day, every day.
And we're just here to talk a little bit about Record Store Day and about Frank's personal experiences with records and how they're bought. So it's just an informal chat, and we'll see where this goes. I guess we should start with growing up. What were your experiences of record shops? Winchester?
Winchester and near where I went to school as well, up in Slough, there were some record shops I used to hit. It was great, actually. I mean, the thing is, at the risk of sounding slightly kind of more underground than now, I mean, like a lot of kids, you know, I had Green Day and Offspring sort of pointing me in a certain direction and NoFX. And then I got into more underground stuff, but I remember there was a place in Winchester where the guy, he'd sort of twigged me after a while, and anything that came in that had a Fat Wreck or an Epitaph logo on, he'd put to one side and see if I wanted to buy it. And you know, that experience of learning about music in that way is something that I think people miss these days. It highlighted the sense of community around music, you know, and the idea of the links between bands, and it's not just this sort of thing that exists in isolation that you sort of listen to on a stream in your bedroom, you know, and that it's related to real people and real events and that kind of thing. So it was really important to me growing up.
Going back kind of 20 years, 15 years, we're of a similar age, but you would find out a lot more about bands and about new music via record shops, whereas today you might have heard it through a stream or something else. But there's still very much a service that record shops play in 2016, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. Well, okay, so at the risk of this turning into a kind of a hug fest, like, you know, I love Banquet. I think it's amazing what you guys are doing here, and what it reminds me of more than anything else is in my kind of early years when I moved to London when I was 18, I used to go and hang out at Selector Disc all the time. And the thing about Selector Disc was you could pick records out of the rack and go and listen to them, and you could get to know the people who worked at the store who could give you recommendations. And actually, quite a few of the people who work there are still friends of mine now. In fact, I live with one of them currently. So you'd sort of come in and you'd be wearing, you know, a Jimmy Eat World t-shirt, and they go, well, okay, if that's your bag, then you want to check out this, 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 and this. And that's information you're never going to get otherwise, you know. And then it built from there as well, in terms of like with Million Dead and in fact Nijo, the band was in before Million Dead, you know, we'd sort of find out about gigs, we'd get onto gigs, we'd advertise the gigs we were playing through the record store, and it's a gathering place. And again, I think one of the things that is important about record stores, and will never cease to be important about record stores, is it's a physical gathering place, you know. Of course there are forums online where you can discuss and all that kind of thing, but there's nothing quite like social interaction. I think it's really important, you know, and you get people in one place and they can talk about music and learn things and learn from each other. I think
that's really true, and I find that more and more everything is done by algorithms in modern life. Even your Facebook feed and maybe your Instagram feed even is like algorithm of you like this or you like this, but there is something that a personal interaction which you can get from real people in a real community hub. Well, and that's what record shops, for me, that's one of their key roles.
Yeah, and I mean, and breaking you out of the kind of sort of self-imposed kind of online ghetto that you end up in, where you just only interact with people you agree with and listen to music that sounds exactly like the other music you like, which is fine, but it's like, I mean, I had a cousin actually used to run a record store in Old Street called Small Fish for a few years, and I used to go out there and I started going there because I was into stuff like Godspeed You Black Emperor, which I got into through the hardcore scene. But then because I was there, he put me onto loads of weird stuff like Clute, a lot of the City Centre Officers records, that kind of sort of blippy electro stuff. And I wouldn't know anything about that if it hadn't been for that record store. And it expanded my horizons and my taste in music.
Talk us through for a minute, will you, about the importance of having a physical release. As an artist, all your albums have been coming out on a physical format.
Well, I mean, I think that it's been interesting the last few years watching the vinyl revival kind of kick off. I'm sure you know more about it than I do. There was a point in time when I first started putting out records and touring, I mean, Million Dead days, where vinyl was out of the question because you'd lose money on it because no one really bought it. And some bands would do it. I think there was more of it going on in sort of more electronic music scenes, but certainly as a hardcore band, Million Dead, we never did vinyl at the time because just no one was interested. Now, if Million Dead were around now, we'd do vinyl without a second thought. And in fact, we have just issued Harmony No Harmony on vinyl last year, and I'm hoping we'll do Song to Ruin at some point as well. You heard it here first.
Exclusive.
Yeah, because vinyl's sort of become this thing. I think, you know, at the same time, I mean, my day-to-day way of listening to music is digital simply because I tour for a living and I can't carry physical records around with me. The idea of trying to carry a rucksack full of vinyl around. I've already broken my back once, thanks very much, you know what I mean? I think it's good having sort of both things going on at the same time, but for me personally, every single record I own digitally, I have a physical copy of at home. And partly, I mean, it's practical, it's a backup, do you know what I mean? And hard drives and stuff have failed on me in the past, and I want to be able to get the music that I want to get, you know, when I want to get it, when I get home. But there's something, you know, I love the size of vinyl. Artwork is fantastic. It's so much better than CD because you can just really get involved in it. And it's another facet to the art, and I think it's something that's being slightly lost. Actually, the other thing, I was on a long car journey over the weekend with my girlfriend who uses Spotify, and we were in a car, and I was, this is the first time I've ever really engaged in Spotify, and it annoyed the crap out of me. Not least because the thing about Spotify's fine if you're not a music nerd, if you just sort of generally want to listen to a bit of something. You just put it on and you get a bit of something. If you're somebody who cares about music, who's nerdy about music, who wants to listen to a specific song by a specific artist, it was a giant pain in the ass. And then also, its scope is terribly kind of mainstream. Do you know what I mean? It's like, there's so much music I want to listen to that isn't on Spotify, that isn't on iTunes. And the idea that I should somehow just sort of abandon physical music and just rely on streaming services for the rest of my life, I think it ignores the existence of underground music. I think it's dangerous for underground music, you know, and I think we need to hold on to physical copies for that.
You talk there about how physical music goes in parallel in some ways with digital, and it's not, for very, very few people, it's either or. It's most people, you know, you use your digital, you stream in some ways, you watch YouTube in other ways, but for some things you want to own and to treasure forever. Yeah, you want the physical format.
Yeah, it's kind of a mark of the stuff that you really care about. Do you know what I mean? And you have the physical thing, and there's a physicality about putting on a record, which I love. It's amazing. You go home and it's like a ritual. It's almost religious.
And,
you know?
And the actual idea of playing an album from 1 through 12, it's not just, music shouldn't just be like a greatest hit stream into
right. Well, that's the other thing about Spotify is that it sort of concentrates. You type in an artist and you get their top 3 songs. I mean, and I can tell you what they'd be for me, you know. And it's like, I like those songs. That's great, and it's great that other people do. But I've written more, and it'd be nice if people listen. I want people to listen more widely to my catalogue, and when I get into an artist, I want to find out more about them. And there's something about that kind of like, you know, most popular songs thing that just sort of like concentrates everything into a really narrow stream, which I think is not good.
Speaking about Record Store Day in general, but I want to speak about you and Record Store Day. You've done a couple of Record Store Day releases to date. This
year's going to be my third. We did a 7-inch with I Still Believe and the cover of Somebody to Love by Queen on it in 2012?
In
the past. I reckon it was 2012, and that was great. Actually, I don't have a copy of that because they got sold, and I then like called someone at Extra Mile and was like, "Where's my one?" And they went, "Yeah." And that was it.
Well, you're not allowed to put any aside, so they were doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, I think I could have one. That's not necessarily breaking the rules. Anyway, whatever. I'll get one day, I'm sure. And then we did a 7-inch recovery for Record Store 2013, and I played a gazillion shows in one day. The last one of which was here, I seem to remember. And I seem to remember getting here and being really tired. And I mean, they're short sets, but that's a fair amount of work for one day, but it's good. I mean, and then of course, this year, 2016, we're doing my first LP for Record Store Day, which is all the acoustic versions of my last record, Positive Songs, Negative People. Those acoustic versions came out as a sort of bonus part of the Deluxe CD, but they've never come out on their own. They've never come out on vinyl, and there'll be a digital thing that goes with them and all the rest of it. So I'm really proud of it, and we've sort of done a sort of rejigged artwork of the record, which I think is really nice, and it sort of looks like a sort of inverse version of the original kind of thing, which I think is kind of cool. But the thing that I always yak on about when it comes to this stuff is that it shouldn't just be about the one day. And personally, I feel like one of the functions of Record Store Day is to bring in younger people into the experience of being involved in a record shop, you know? And there's a little bit of that kind of sort of slightly people being over it, or people being like, well, I go to record stores anyway. And it's like, well, good for you, but we're not talking to you in that case. Do you know what I mean? We're talking to sort of younger kids who might just be getting into music for the first time, whose only experience so far is online and streaming and that kind of thing. And you want to say to them, look, these places exist, you should come to them, you can find out more, and you can expand your experience of music, and you can immerse yourself in a culture so much more than you can at your bedroom. I'm ranting now.
Absolutely, no, I agree entirely. When Record Store Day first came to these shores, I was quite cynical cynical about it. I was like, we're a record shop every day of the year, we don't need this. But then some of my favourite bands at the time, like Block Party and Slow Club, started putting out releases, and I was like, oh my God, this is actually really exciting. But what we saw a few years ago is when One Direction put out a record for Record Store Day, and I think there was a bit of kind of, oh my God, why are they getting involved? In the same way maybe that Justin Bieber is this year. But what we saw then was that a whole new kind of customer coming, queuing up, like getting here hours before we open, queuing up and wanting to be a part of it, and that's to be welcomed.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same thing as the people, as the long and tedious experience I've had in the past of people being snobbish about Green Day or about Blink-182, or indeed in recent years about me, because I'm not underground anymore. But it's like, if all I ever do in my music is conduit people towards discovering Mineral and Black Flag, then that's fine. I'm happy with that. And similarly, with Record Store Day, if it's a mainstream record that brings people into the record shop, but then they stick around, then everybody wins. I don't really see what's to complain about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a lot of people, with laptops not necessarily having CD drives, for some people, they've missed out on CDs altogether. So it's a step from a digital or a stream to a record, and it's a beautiful thing to see. Have you looked at any of the lists this year? Have you picked out any favourites?
I can't say I actually have had a chance.
I'll pick you out some of my favourites.
Okay.
There's a La Dispute record which was filmed.
I did a gig with them like years ago. Like, it must have been one of their first shows. They were like a local support for me somewhere in America. I think Philadelphia or something like that. And I remember me and my band and crew slightly kind of going, these guys are pretty good for a local support. Like, what's going on with this? And I've it's been a name that's been in the back of my head since then. So yes.
No, they're a really, really fascinating band. But that one was actually recorded live in Kingston.
Oh, okay,
so
amazing.
That's a special one for us.
Yeah.
There's this lad, Frank Turner. You might have heard of. He's got a record out.
Terrible bullshit.
So other than Record Store Day, maybe tell us some of the records that you've got into recently.
Well, there's one that's right here, and I'm going to pull it out of the racks, and it's going to look like we set this up, but we honestly didn't.
We didn't.
This is the debut album by Heck, who used to be called Baby Godzilla, but now they're called Heck, and the record's called Instructions, and they are phenomenal. I'm going to drop a name, forgive me for this. Ginger Wildheart, who's a friend of mine, was shouting at me for about a year about checking them out. And I sort of did that thing of like when somebody talks about a band too much, you kind of it slightly falls off the top of your list. And then I saw them at a festival. I saw them at Why Not Festival, and they absolutely tore my face off my head. And since then, I've been a huge fan. And it's interesting to me because they're a band who've made a huge reputation for themselves live. But in terms of on record, they've got this sort of techie, crusty, grindy sort of stuff, which is so up my street, it's ridiculous. And it reminds me of like early Dillinger, but also stuff like Cap Cash and like Charles Bronson and Spaz and that kind of thing. And I love it. So that's really exciting to me. Obviously, the Will Varley record's been out for a little while now, Postcards from Ursa Minor. Have you had Will down here?
Yeah, he played in the shop.
Yeah, excellent. He just sold out the Scala the other day, and I couldn't be happy. I'm so excited for him.
He's come a long way from the drunk teenager handing in his demos to us a few years back.
Really? Yeah, amazing. Yeah, he's
a drunk adult handing in his demos.
Yes. Will, I just think it fills me with joy to see Will doing well. I just think he's a genius and he's a wonderful person, so I'm very happy for him. And then what else have I been listening to that is new? We got Ducking Punches.
Yep.
Out on the road with us. They got a new record called Fizzy Brain on Extra Mile. Is that out yet, or is that?
Yeah.
That's out. Okay.
They were here too.
Okay, fantastic. There we go. And I'm in fact seeing them in Barcelona tomorrow because the tour starts with them tomorrow. So Ducking Punches are wonderful and brilliant. So, as the proprietor of Banquet Records, I live in London. We're sort of in the larger M25 area. Where do people go if they're not in London?
Well, I don't really shop at many record shops other than this one because I'm here every day. But there is a lot of really thriving record shops left in 2016. The ones that are still have got through this really tough time for any independent business, let alone record shops. The ones that are left are doing well. So you can look at. I've always got time for Spillers. I've got time for Drift, and then you've got like the small ones like Pine Vinyl doing some great things
down there. Yeah.
Some great things, and Jumbo and Crash and like all of the ones across the country. They're all trying to put on a little community hub in their communities, and I do think wherever there's a strong music scene, there generally is a strong record shop left to help it out. And whether it's chicken or egg, I don't know, but they are synonymous. So I'm glad that we're all doing all right in 2016. A lot of that, not all of it, of course, but a lot of that is due to to impart to Record Store Day, because, like you were saying earlier, it gets people not just talking about the record shop that day, but that then opens doors for the rest of the year. Like we don't get national press every day, but we do get national press on Record Store Day. People talk about it. We get queues down the road, and it's a great excuse to talk about something which everyone's got time for in music. Like no one's too good for music. You know, let's all appreciate and be a part of this special thing.
Well, as we were mentioning earlier, I think one of the things for me is who Record Store Day is aimed at, and I think it's the younger people is more important for them, because it's a new thing for them. And just my experience of underground music was punk rock, but I mean there's by no means the only type of underground music. But the thing about it was, I remember being, I'm about to get a bit dewy-eyed, but like I remember being a teenager and sort of like I had like a Clash record and a NoFX record and that kind of thing, and I loved it, but I didn't really know anybody who liked the kind of stuff I was into. I didn't know where the gigs were, I didn't know what was going on, and I remember sort of, and that moment when you finally stumble across the underground, as it were, when you find your way there. And I remember sort of going to household name gigs in the late 90s and going to Evil Fest and Lil and Catherine running a distro in the side of the gigs and that kind of thing. I just sort of felt like I'd sort of been rescued from a life of sort of awful tedium, which is a terribly adolescent thing to say, but it is also kind of true. And if Record Store Day kind of opens that door and shines a light for lots of young kids around the world, then I'm super in favour of it.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll sort of wrap it up there. Record Store Day is on April the 16th. It's at all the 200 odd independent record shops across the country. Releases come out that day. There's over 700 releases to choose from. Check out the list online. They go on sale on the Saturday, and then it's for a week. You can only buy them in independent shops. If there's any left, they go online on the week after, so that's the 23rd onwards. And maybe we'll have some Frank Turners left, but probably not, knowing how many people around here want your records.
Yeah, okay, well, that's good to know.
Nice one. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, mate.